Listeners, Coxie, hello.
Hi. Just occurred to me I'm meant to have a joke and I don't have one today, so perhaps I can be the butt of my own joke.
Ooh, oh, my mum sent me a couple of jokes. Now, my mum is 78 and she's always on the lookout for jokes for us. But the ones she shares with me, I'm like, no, mum, that's 3-year-old level. Well, even though my mental age is probably about 5 sometimes. And she sent me a couple of funny ones, which I actually thought were pretty good. What did one chicken say to the other chicken? Shut the clock up.
Oh, that's not bad. That's one I would have chosen.
Anyway, that's my mum's level of hey, here's a joke for your podcast, son.
I've got one that's topical and probably only you and I are going to know what it's relating to.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
What kind of cat likes living in water?
Oh no. Is it a catfish?
No, it's an octopus.
Oh, even better. G'day, I'm Waz.
And I'm Nick, sometimes Coxie, mostly Nick.
This is the Tradies in Business podcast, and we're here to share a bunch of tips, ideas, tactics that you can put in place to get change happening in your trade business right now.
If you're really lucky, we're going to entertain you with a few mum jokes and, more importantly, a bunch of fantastic guests that will educate you in all things you need to know about trade business. But we do promise to do it with a whole bunch of fun along the way.
I'm a self-confessed idiot, so strap yourself in and enjoy another episode. Thought I was smart. I'm not. I feel terrible now.
Oh,
I'm
these are
stupid.
very hard to guess because like we said on an episode recently, you don't know which way the person who creates the joke is thinking.
Okay, where's the segue in this, Coxie?
Mm.
I'm feeling very isolated right now.
Oh, that's terrible.
That was as connected as anyway. I don't know. All right, well, it's apparently it's National Tradie Health Month. We've got a thing. There's a month for it. We give it a name. People eat sausage rolls and raise money for something or other. And I'm being very cynical, which is pretty easy for me because sometimes I'm pretty cynical and jaded. And part of that, gang, comes from my own personal experience of some of the things that I've lived through, some pretty confronting stuff and some very challenging stuff in my life where I have felt like nobody else understands. I don't feel very supported despite awareness campaigns and everything that are going on all the time. It doesn't matter that people are aware of particular issues. I just don't feel like I was supported, and I didn't know who to talk to about stuff because everyone's busy and they got their own things going on. And so I see things like National Tradie Health Month, and it's like, great, go eat a salad, drink some more water, do 99 push-ups or whatever the hell it is. And it's like, I think some of these things just really miss the mark. And there's a lot more to health, for example, with this topic than I think the conversations really get into.
I think perhaps I'm not quite as cynical around the idea, but let's talk
Lucky for
broadly.
you.
I feel as though I don't feel like these days are designed to make anybody feel supported. I feel as though they're an opportunity for people like you and I to have a conversation that might open some eyes or encourage some different thinking or at least bring it to the attention of those people that we have the opportunity to talk to. It's a little bit like the Are You OK Day. You and I have been very vocal about that being a load of baloney and that it doesn't actually prevent what it's trying to prevent, and it doesn't contribute to better mental health. Instead, I feel like it just raises awareness that there are these problems. It becomes part of everyday conversation. So I think in that way, it's quite positive that we're thinking about tradies and their health because I think they're pretty neglected and they're certainly not spoken about positively in the media very frequently. So to be spoken about in this way where there is a focus on their health, I think that's a great opportunity. I just don't think that it's a blanket solution that we often see, like you referenced, eating salads, doing some more exercise, all of the cliche things that we term as health. I don't know necessarily that that's the most beneficial focus for this month. For you and I, it's something very different. We believe that there is a lack of connection, and we believe that there is a lot of stress that needs to be sorted. And
Mm.
neither of those things can be fixed with a salad or some more exercise.
No. I wonder sometimes, Coxie, if because there are so many groups, there's so many government departments, there's so many minorities and policymakers and stakeholders in any of these issues, these social issues, that it actually ends up watering down any impact that um, can be had because everyone's got their own idea. But even you and I, we have our own ideas, and this is just our opinion. This is probably an opinion piece today. Lord knows I have an opinion on my own opinions. So it's just so fragmented. And I actually think sometimes that contributes to the problem, like some of the health issues amongst tradies and trade business owners, in that I suspect a lot of them don't feel like they belong to or fit in with some of the groups that are trying to do good. And look, let me park my soapbox and my cynical hat, put it in the drawer with the tinfoil one. Um, a lot of people are trying to do good,
Mm.
and unfortunately, these things persist. You know, if we were having an impact with all these things, how come we still have so many problems? You know, if this was the solution, we would have solved it or at least made big inroads into what's going on, and we have not. You know, whether it's mental health or physical health or financial health or relationships, like you've only got to turn on the news or scroll social media and you can see that we still having all the same problems we were having 10, 20, 30 years ago. In fact, probably more so in some areas. So clearly this is not the solution, is to just raise awareness. You and I don't often disagree, and I don't think we are. It's just I probably have a dimmer view of like how much more awareness do we need that tradies aren't very healthy, and it's not necessarily their fault. Is a point I do want to make.
I think they just don't focus on it. And I'm
Mm,
speaking broadly, and not everybody's the same. So, as usual, when we talk about these subjects, we have to speak with
mm,
a
great point.
generalistic approach.
Great
And
point.
so not everyone that's listening to this is going to get much out of this episode, and others will listen and think, you know what, I haven't thought about that, or that's a great way that I could make a change. I feel as though it's not a focus for many of them because probably like the majority of small business owners, they are so busy and so stressed that they barely have a thought to their own health in one form or another. And as we said before, we're not necessarily talking, well, we are talking about physical health. We're just talking about it
Hmm.
from a different angle here today. We're not talking about your nutrition because that's a divisive issue. We don't have all of the
Not
answers.
going to touch that with a lettuce leaf.
No, no lettuce leaves here. We might get a T-bone and poke it around a little bit. It's just not. It's a very divisive issue, and what works for you might not work for the next person. So I don't know that that's necessarily something we are qualified to talk about. What I do believe we're qualified to talk about is the lack of connection we see between the trades and the stress levels that they're coming through their business with, and that's what I feel like an awareness or a reminder or an opportunity like we have today to let people know one, it's not their fault, and two, they're not alone.
And it doesn't have to be that way. Nick, I think yeah, well, you've made some great points, and uh, it's a general issue. There are some inarguable facts that have been shown to be true, and this is not specific just to you as a trade business owner or a tradie listening to this, or a tradie wife, or whoever you are listening to this podcast. It's for humans.
Mm,
We all do better with connection to community or to a tribal group. It's been part of our DNA since we were either, created or made out of dust or whatever you believe. It doesn't really matter. We've always thrived on connection with our tribe. And I believe, and certainly reading commentary and books from people way smarter than me who are actually qualified to talk about this stuff, we are less connected to our fellow humans now than we've ever been, despite being more connected practically emotionally and spiritually, we're not as connected. We're all busy. People just don't even have time for their health, Nick. And that's something I want to grab hold of that you mentioned. People feel so busy and so overwhelmed and so attacked on all fronts by social media and kids' commitments and business challenges and employee dramas that their own personal health and well-being just doesn't even get a look in.
Mm.
I find it hard enough to prioritize my health and well-being, and you and I are very conscious about how we've structured our business and our work time, and there are periods where I feel like I just don't have time to take care of myself.
Mm.
And I think that's probably one of the universal issues that we see, certainly amongst trade business owners.
Yeah, I think when you back that up with that, like a connection that you're talking about, the trade space, for whatever reason, I still don't understand this. It's very isolated space. My assumption is because it so frequently, even today, trades businesses start where an employee has decided they can do a better job. And so they go off and they open the same business in the same town as the person they were working for. And so we become really insular because I don't
Mm.
want to share what I'm doing because you might benefit from my experience. The problem with that is when things aren't going well, you don't have anybody to help you feel validated or normal through that process because every business owner that we speak to goes through exactly the same big feelings. We all process them differently. We all have different experiences to bring them to the table, and all of them feel stressed and overwhelmed and frustrated with team and frustrated with clients and worried about money, and all business owners go through that in one period of their business, sometimes all at once. And because we don't have the connection due to fear, it's the old adage, a problem shared is a problem halved. There's nothing truer than getting into a community where you are able to share the way what you're going through or the way you feel, and you walk away feeling better. You might not have all of the steps or you might not have all of the things to go and change it. Nothing changes quickly, but you feel supported and you feel as though, oh my God, goodness, I'm not the only one. There's nothing more validating than understanding you're not alone. If I relate this back, many of our listeners have children, and it's very similar in the space when we have kids. We're quite insular in what we feel like isn't working. Or, I was one of those mums that really struggled with my kids. I was essentially a single mum to my two children. So being alone 24 hours a day on duty with your kids is really stressful. They would cry a lot. Both of them were quite poorly when they were little. And so that created a lot of stress for me. And I personally felt like a failure. Now, if I watch women's groups now, and if I had shared that, or been brave enough to let somebody know how I was feeling, I could have felt a whole bunch better. I could have received a whole bunch of validation, a whole bunch of tips of things to try. I could have had a new direction or known what specialist to see or just something other than carrying all of that burden myself. So if you're listening to this and you think that you can't necessarily seek support for where you're at because you're feeling like you need to keep things really insular. Think about a time with your children when you've shared something you're going through and somebody's made you feel valid. Oh, yeah, we went through that.
Hmm. I spoke to someone who actually joined our community recently about an issue they were having. And I'll keep the details vague because I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable if they listen to this and they realize I'm talking about them, even though I'm not sharing a name. But they shared an issue with us as part of, just chatting about where they're at and, could we help them here at Tradies in Business with our Tradiepreneur program. And to them, the issue they were having, they thought it was like next to catastrophic. To them, it felt like, and they languaged it in terms of, I got this thing and I don't really want to talk about it because it's embarrassing and it's massive and I feel so terrible about it all. And, when we spoke to them, it was like, that's cool. That's cool. You don't have to share it with us at this stage. But if you're comfortable, can you just give us a bit more detail? And they said, oh, well, it's this and this is what it looks like more specifically. And I recall uh, genuinely going, oh, is that all? And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, well, we've worked with plenty of people who have had that same issue, but times 5 or 10.
Yeah.
And they've gotten through that in 6, 12 months, 24 months, by putting some stuff in place, making some changes, bit of support. We've had heaps of people that we work with. In fact, we're working with a few right now that are in a similar position times 5. And he went, oh my gosh, I just didn't even realize. I didn't think anybody else would be like this. And just to know that there's some other people out there, but particularly in our community here at Tradies in Business, that have overcome that with some support. Just, I could just feel 300 kilos of weight drop off this guy's shoulders.
Mm.
And I think for me, that's the benefit of connection and community. When it comes to health, that had such a massive impact on his emotional health, his mental health, and there'll be a flow on to his physical health, because these things become such a weight. And if you're listening to this and you've got stuff going on in your life, I imagine that would be 99% of people listening to this podcast, because we've all got stuff going on, right, Nick?
Yep.
But if you're listening to this and you've got stuff going on, it feels heavy. You get out of bed in the morning, it feels like you've got a 100-kilo weight vest on every day when you get up, and your weight vest is made up of your stuff. Just being able to share what's in that weight vest with other people who go, yeah, I'm carrying 10 kilos like that too. Oh yeah, I got another 15 kilos of this money stuff. And oh man, let me tell you about my 40 kilos of staff dramas. Just knowing that other people are carrying that same weight around actually means that sometimes it gives us permission to like put it down on the floor with theirs, and we can all pile our shit in the middle and go, wow, we've all got the same stuff. Let's just put it all in the middle here. And it
I
lifts
think
the load. Sorry, Coxie.
that's okay. I feel as though the other opportunity here, when you're sharing within a community, when you're brave enough to be vulnerable, is somebody might have a solution.
Yeah.
And we see time and time again somebody come and share their vulnerabilities in one of our sessions, and half a dozen other business owners jump up with a solution. And the solutions all look very similar
Mm,
and they're easy to implement. And not only is it a solution, it's like, hey, I've already done this thing here, I'll sling it to you. And you can just implement it straight into your business. And the reduction of stress is intense. It's just amazing to think that there could be a solution for some of these problems. But because you are so isolated, or you're feeling so isolated and you haven't had the opportunity to be vulnerable and share that particular issue, it's really hard to find A, what the real issue is, and then B, how do we solve that problem?
mm.
And so I think, when it comes to connection, when it comes to community, I think we also need to be really mindful of the community that we select. There are some parts of the community that contribute to your stress and anxiety. So I
Yeah.
think that there needs to be boundaries and there needs to be choice around who makes us feel good and who doesn't. And if somebody's not the right vibe for us, we've got to be okay to let that go.
Mm.
That can be one of those things we can leave in the middle of the room. But I see, around. Well, I'll talk about another client example. There's been a couple of times this year when, if you believe others in the community and you listen to the narrative that is put out there by the media, we're in for doom and gloom. For the next 2 years, it's absolute doom and gloom. Interest rates are going to go through the roof. It's going to be really hard to get finance. People have got no money. Tough times are coming. Now, I'm not saying whether one or the other is going to happen. And if that's the only information I ever heard, that's the information I would believe. Now, I make a very mindful choice about where I get my information from and who I spend time with, because I don't necessarily I don't want to be naive, please don't get me wrong, but I don't want that to become my reality, because it's the only thing I think about and therefore is the only evidence that I seek. And so
Right.
I encourage you, if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, well, I'm feeling as though I'm ready to start connecting, or at least being vulnerable and sharing some of what I'm going through, just be a little choosy about who you share it with, so you don't end up in this self-fulfilling
Mm.
prophecy of the doom and gloom perhaps that you feel like. Well, another example would be all staff are shit. We had this conversation in our momentum session this week, which is about keeping our tradiepreneurs moving forward and making progress on their goals. And so we were talking about staff. Many of them are working on recruitment or retaining of good staff. And somebody said to us, all staff are shit. That it's really hard. They never do what you want them to do. They won't perform the way you want them to perform. They're going to let you down. Okay, fair point. That might be your experience to this point in time. That doesn't mean it's going to be an ongoing experience unless that's the reality you create for yourself by determining that that's a truth.
Mm.
We talk frequently about creating your own truth. You get to make up your own story every single day. And if you believe that staff are great and you consciously start to act as though staff are great, that's going to introduce or allow you to find the necessary framework to create great staff. And
Mm.
suddenly, staff are great. They're not all shit. They're actually fantastic. So a lot of this is about, being selective with the community, ensuring that you're with supported and similarly minded people that want to help you out and help you find that positive way forward instead of just validating those feelings and getting stuck there. It's important to validate the feelings, but let's not get stuck. Let's look at a way forward.
Yeah. We've got to definitely validate them and then move on to other possibilities and
Yeah.
choices.
We haven't spoken
I
about the triangle for a while.
the good old triangle of possibilities. Look, Tradie Health Month. I think it's important, Nick. I'm gonna contradict myself, perhaps, after saying at the start of this episode that look, I don't think it's a crock. That's not what that's not the message I intend to get across. I look at this in terms of opportunity cost. So the effort and the funding and the airtime that goes into certain things means that it's not available to go into other areas. And I believe that awareness campaigns have been running on social issues now for what, 40 years, 50 years? It's been a bit of a thing since the internet and social media. They've become just everyone creates a new foundation or a walk for something. Like they're just popping up everywhere. And that's great. But what about the next step? What about giving people solutions? What about actually doing something tangible to make a difference rather than just make people aware that there's a problem? And look, we teach this in our community, Nick, with our tradiepreneurs about problem focus versus solution focus. And I feel
Mm,
like this whole awareness thing is problem focus. Yeah, there's a problem. Great. I'm aware of the problem now. Now
mm,
what? And there seems to be a lot less going into solutions, perhaps because of what you talked about earlier with nutrition, right?
mm, mm,
Everyone seems to have their own idea about what works and what doesn't work. Nobody can agree on an approach or a handful of approaches that people could follow, and yet people are fatter and sicker and more chronically unwell than they've ever been before, despite having access to a plethora of information around just nutrition. And
mm,
then there's mental health, and then there's relationships. And so all these aspects of health, it's like nobody really wants to go out there with solutions because they're going to get shot down by everybody else who disagrees with them. So
mm,
um, I actually think there's a collective wisdom amongst our groups, our communities, our tribes that has kind of been lost a bit. When you look at parenting or any of these things, even business, the stuff, as you said, Nick, that our tradiepreneur clients share with each other, and the level of raising each other up in our community is just phenomenal. It's
mm,
so humbling to me as a coach who is supposedly, a business guy, and I'm supposed to know a bunch of stuff about business. There's people swapping ideas in our community. It's just like, man, that's awesome.
mm,
I hadn't thought of that. And so when
mm,
you bring together people like you're talking about who have that common goal of being better, doing better, thinking better, feeling better, it's amazing what comes out of that. And I
mm,
think that's a huge part of a solution to the ill health amongst, let's talk about tradies and tradie business owners, is actually just getting into a positive, like-minded group of people and tuning out some of the negative bullshit noise that we're all peppered with, because that means we have to go spend more money with a big corporation. Sorry, there's some more cynicism for you.
I wonder how polarizing this is going to be. I really hope this is one of those episodes where we actually get some feedback because I reckon there's a lot of listeners thinking, right, it is bullshit. We hear this stuff all the time. Nobody's really taking action. And maybe there's a different way to look at it. Maybe there is opportunity to get our business under control, get our cash flow under control, reduce our stress,
Mm,
stop being so wrought out all of the time, find a way to make
mm,
a business that runs without you so that you can actually take some time to connect with your peers, go camping, go surfing, have a weekend away, go overseas with your family, whatever a good time looks like for you.
Mm.
I'm hopeful that there are more people that are listening that think it's time for a change. Let's focus differently on what health looks like and get
Yeah.
to the root cause of ill health.
You have just summed up 32 minutes or whatever I spent ranting and waffling in a couple of sentences. Coxie, well done. You just nailed it.
Thanks.
What does health actually look like?
Mm,
And yeah, find some people, find a program, whatever it is that is going to support you to do differently.
mm,
And I agree, Coxie. I think it's got to get back to fundamentals. It's like connect with our natural world, with our physical selves, with our family and our relationships. And we've seen people who have done that, and holy crap, they feel so much better. They're so much healthier. They drop the weight. Their knees don't give them so much grief because they're not crawling around laying tiles so much. Like
mm.
it's simple stuff. I don't think the solution is overly complicated. It certainly doesn't have a trademark on it or a patent. Uh, so I love that, Nick. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Perhaps we should end there on a bright point.
Leave people feeling bright and light about National Tradie Health Month.
Look, if you are sitting there listening to this and thinking, you know what, I need some of this goodness in my life, I need a community, reach out. We've got several different communities. Not all are paid.
Mm.
We've got some spaces where cool people hang out that are ready to support you, that are totally free and not part of a program. You can just come be part of the community. You can find us over at tradiesandbusiness.com.au, or you can hit up any of our socials. We're always hanging around. We want to know what you're up to.
Thanks for listening.
Hooroo.